Hi, I'm Chris Kwasny, your Facilitation and Scrum Mastery Specialist, and this video is all about retrospectives. Now, retros are one of my favorite events and activities to facilitate when you bring a group or team together to focus not on what they're trying to deliver, but how they're working together to deliver it. Retros are an opportunity as a facilitator and Scrum Master to live and breathe that continuous improvement spirit. But it's really my favorite because there are so many ways to do it. So many different activities to figure out what's going well or what's in our way or what could be better. And most importantly, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to commit to because of this experience in this retro? But over the past years, I've identified not only a lot of great activities that I'm going to share with you in this video, but 3 key factors that help me determine which activity would be best for the audience that I'm serving and facilitating. So let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so we're talking retros, and I'm going to walk through the 3 factors that help me identify whether a retro activity is a good fit for the audience, the group or team that I'm going to be working with. And I'm also going to share 4 activities, some of my favorites, that you should add to your toolbox, and let me know in the comments on whether or not they work for you. But that first factor as a facilitator or a Scrum Master to identify which retro activity I should use is how vulnerable. What level of vulnerability does this group have? If it has high vulnerability, we're going to be able to get into the details and things not become too personal or uncomfortable to go forward. But if there's low vulnerability, if there's low trust, you can still identify better. You just have to be careful not to trigger or create any additional or avoidable resistance in the group you're working with. So try to understand how vulnerable, how open is this group, and let that drive which activity you choose. The second factor or question that I ask is, how formal of a group or an environment or a situation is this? Are we working with a group of executives that don't normally do this type of open reflection? Are we working with a group of people that are brand new to each other or that have been working together for years? How formal the environment is will really impact which activity will be most successful. If you bring in, for example, a very casual and joking and fun retro activity, it's a great activity, into an overly formal environment, it may not produce the best outcome. So first, how open and how vulnerable people are, and how formal or casual is the environment. And these 2 things really help me identify which areas are best. So let's just walk through those 4 example activities on this small matrix of more formal, less formal, higher vulnerability, and lower vulnerability. So if you have high vulnerability, but you want to keep things less formal, I recommend a retro called heart mapping. Now, heart mapping is really great because you get a group of people together and you help them figure out what makes my soul sing and what makes my soul cry. What makes me happy, what makes me sad. It's a very open and emotional and true discussion about what brings my energy up and what brings my energy down. But in the second wave of this activity, you figure out, what can I do more of to bring the energy up, and what can I do less of to bring that energy down? A heart map is a great way to collaboratively identify what we could do to raise that energy, raise that morale. That's heart mapping. Now, let's say we have high vulnerability, but it's far more formal. It is a more serious retrospective opportunity. Well, for those, I recommend a failure mode evaluation. It's very formal, as it's supposed to be, because that's what the environment and the people are expecting. But it requires high vulnerability to be honest and truthful about what a failure is, why it occurred, what we can do about it next time, and how do we know if we do that it'll prevent or correct the failure. We're going to be pointing and inspecting and peeling back and getting into those details where the answer might be, I messed up, or this is lacking over here. That takes vulnerability to recognize and to accept that there's something better, that there's something you can do about it. So high vulnerability, but very formal, I would recommend a failure mode evaluation and analysis. Now, what if we're very formal, but we're not vulnerable? We're not open. The trust is just getting started. Well, I like to do a pretty simple activity called is, isn't, does, doesn't. Now, does, doesn't. What that does is it helps make things very specific and external. What this is, what it isn't. Very black and white and binary. What it does, what it doesn't do. And when you can get a group of people to start putting their thoughts into these quadrants, you can find where the conflicts are. Well, I thought this does do this. No, I thought it doesn't do that. Well, let's have a conversation. It really helps bring people together without making it personal or getting too close or vulnerable. So an is, isn't, does, doesn't activity is great for high formality, low vulnerability. Now, the last activity that I want to share with you is a low vulnerability, low formality. So we can be casual, but we don't want to be too direct. We don't want to get too much to the core. Well, really simply, let's talk about hopes and concerns. Yes, it's personal, but it's not real. It's not immediate. It's not objective. It's just, I hope this happens or I'm concerned about that. And by making it an opinion and making it more short term and less permanent, it helps people in a low vulnerability and in a low formality environment just start sharing and start opening up, right? So hopes and concerns. So what I really want to highlight here is two factors that really make a difference is how vulnerable a group is and how formal a group is. But I said there are going to be three factors. So what's that third one? And the third one might be most important of all. That third factor is context, right? There is a context, a situation, a scenario, a place that this group or team is in, and you need to recognize where they are to make sure that this retro helps them get through, get past, achieve, overcome, and make a decision together as a group on what better looks like. Now, I'm going to use these same activities, but as an example, if you're heart mapping, that's likely something that's going to have a context of team morale or team health. If you sense that there is a low energy or potential conflicts that aren't coming to the surface that are affecting your morale, heart mapping is a great way to give them visibility. Now, what if the morale is fine, but you're running into process issues? This is our workflow. This is how things are going, right? For process issues, I would recommend the failure mode evaluation and analysis. Let's identify activities and tasks and procedures in our process that can improve. A better process should produce better results. Let's talk about it. Now, what if the context is people are unsure? Now, our morale is fine and our process is great, but I'm unsure about something. We need more clarity. The is, isn't, does, doesn't activity is fantastic because it can help, again, not only identify conflicts between different people and their opinions, but it should result in a clearer definition of whatever we're talking about. If it's a particular role, this role does or doesn't do this, or this particular policy or this particular tool does or doesn't serve us in this way, it helps us get all on the same page and get that clarity. Now, our last hopes and concerns. If you feel that there's a context and an issue on focus, we have great morale, we've got a solid process, we understand how each piece comes together, but we're doing a little bit of everything and not getting things done. Let's focus on what those major items are. Let's focus on what the biggest thing in our way is, or the easiest change towards better. Now, these three factors of vulnerability and formality paired with an insight on what context, where the team is at, and I guarantee you're going to facilitate an incredible retro. That retro will help the group identify what more effective and higher quality working looks like. And if you're doing it right, it's going to leave with one action that the team will take before the next retro so you can see if you're actually getting better. Now, these are just 4 of my favorite activities and 3 questions that I always ask myself as a facilitator and Scrum Master before going into any retro. Please, please, please let me know in the comments whether you want to learn more about these or other activities or other topics you'd like videos altogether. And please don't forget to subscribe and turn on your alerts. I'm Chris Kwasny, your Facilitation and Scrum Mastery Specialist, and there'll be more on the next one.